The Ryukyuan languages are the indigenous languages of the Ryukyu Islands, the southernmost part of the Japanese archipelago. Along with the Japanese language, they make up the Japonic language family. Although the Ryukyuan languages have sometimes been considered to be dialects of Japanese, they are not mutually intelligible with Japanese or even with each other. It is not known how many speakers of these languages remain, but language shift towards the use of standard Japanese and dialects like Okinawan Japanese has resulted in these languages becoming endangered. UNESCO labels 4 of the languages definitely endangered, and 2 others critically endangered. Overview. Phonologically, the Ryukyuan languages have some cross-linguistically unusual features. Southern Ryukyuan languages have a number of syllabic consonants, including unvoiced syllabic fricatives. Glottalized consonants are common. Some Ryukyuan languages have phonemic central vowels, e.g., uanimami, ki, tri. Ikema Miyako has a voiceless nasal phoneme n. Many Ryukyuan languages, like Standard Japanese and most Japanese dialects, have contrastive pitch accent. Ryukyuan languages are generally SOV-dependent marking modifier head nominative accusative languages, like the Japanese language. Adjectives are generally bound morphemes, occurring either with noun compounding or using verbalization. Many Ryukyuan languages mark both nominatives and genitives with the same marker. This marker has the unusual feature of changing form depending on an animus-C hierarchy. The Ryukyuan languages have topic and focus markers, which may take different forms depending on the sentential context. Ryukyuan also preserves a special verbal inflection for clauses with focus markers. This unusual feature was also found in Old Japanese, but lost in modern Japanese. Classification and varieties. The Ryukyuan languages belong to the Japonic language family, related to the Japanese language. The Ryukyuan languages are not mutually intelligible with Japanese. In fact, they are not even mutually intelligible with each other, and thus may be considered separate languages. However, for socio-political and ideological reasons, they have sometimes been classified as dialects of Japanese. The Okinawan language is only 71% lexically similar to Tokyo Japanese. Even the southernmost Japanese dialect is only 72% lexically similar to the northernmost Ryukyuan language. The Kagoshima dialect of Japanese, however, is 80% lexically similar to Standard Japanese. Starting in the 1890s, the Japanese government began to suppress the Ryukyuan languages as part of the policy of forced assimilation in the islands. Since the beginning of World War II, most mainland Japanese have regarded the Ryukyuan languages as a dialect, a group of dialects of Japanese. During World War II, in an effort to build consciousness in people as subjects of the Japanese Empire, not only the Ryukyuan group, but also Korean, Palauan, and various other languages were referred to as dialects of Japanese. There is general agreement among linguistics experts that Ryukyuan varieties can be divided into 6 languages, conservatively, with dialects unique to islands within each group also sometimes considered languages. Each Ryukyuan language is generally unintelligible to others in the same family. There is a wide diversity between them. For example, Yonaguni has only 3 vowels, whereas varieties of Amami may have up to 7, excluding length distinctions. The table below illustrates the different phrases used in each language for thank you and welcome, with Standard Japanese provided for comparison. Many speakers of the Amami, Miyako, Yaeyama and Yonaguni languages may also be familiar with Okinawan, since the language counts the most speakers and once acted as the regional standard. Speakers of Yonaguni are also likely to know the Yaeyama language due to its proximity. Since Amami, Miyako, Yaeyama, and Yonaguni are less urbanized than the Okinawan mainland, their languages are not declining as quickly as that of Okinawa proper, and some children continue to be brought up in these languages. A widely accepted hypothesis among linguists categorizes the Ryukyuan languages into two groups, Northern Ryukyuan and Southern Ryukyuan. In Okinawa, a dialect of Standard Japanese known as Okinawan Japanese has developed. Status: there is no census data for the Ryukyuan languages, and the number of speakers is unknown. As of 2005, the total population of the Ryukyu region was 1,452,288, but fluent speakers are restricted to the older generation, generally in the 50s or older, and thus the true number of Ryukyuan speakers should be much lower. Today, the number of children still being brought up with the Ryukyuan languages is becoming increasingly rare throughout the islands, and usually only occurs when the children are living with their grandparents. The Ryukyuan languages are still used in traditional cultural activities, such as folk music, folk dance, poem and folk plays. There is also a radio news program in the Naha dialect since 1960. In Okinawa, people under the age of 40 have little proficiency in the native Okinawan language. A new mixed language based on Japanese and Okinawan has developed, known as Okinawan Japanese. Although it has been largely ignored by linguists and language activists, this is the language of choice among the younger generation. Similarly, the common language now used in everyday conversations in the Amami Oshima is not the traditional Amami language, but rather a regional variation of Amami accented Japanese, locally nicknamed by older speakers. To try to preserve the language, the Okinawan prefectural government proclaimed on March 31, 2006, that September 18 would be commemorated as Shimaku Tuba no Hai, as the day's numerals in Goroways spell out ku, tu, ba. Kutuba is one of the few words common throughout the Ryukyuan languages meaning word or language. A similar commemoration is held in the Amami region on February 18 beginning in 2007, proclaimed as Hogen no Hai by Oshima Sub-Prefecture in Kagoshima Prefecture. Each island has its own name for the event: Amami Oshima, Shimayumuta no Hai, Shimaku Tuba no Hai. On Kikajima it is Shimayumita no Hai. On Tokuno-shima it is Shimaguchi no Hai, Shimayumi-ita no Hai. On Okinawa-Abujima it is Shimanuni no Hai. On Yorinjima it is Unafutuba no Hai. Yorinjima's Futuba is the Gorowaway source of the February 18 date, much like with Okinawa Prefecture's use of Kutuba. History: it is generally accepted that the Ryukyu Islands were populated from mainland Japan in the first millennium, and since then relative isolation from the mainland allowed the Ryukyuan languages to diverge significantly from Old Japanese. However, the discoveries of the Pinza Abu Cave Man, the Minatogawa Man, and the Yamashita Cave Man as well as the Shiraho Seiwantabaru Cave ruins suggest an earlier arrival to the island by modern humans. Some researchers suggest that the Ryukyuan languages are most likely to have evolved from a pre-Proto-Japonic language from the Korean peninsula. However, Ryukyuan may have already begun to diverge from early Japanese before this migration, while its speakers still dwelt in the main islands of Japan. After this initial settlement, there was little contact between the main islands and the Ryukyu Islands for centuries, allowing Ryukyuan to diverge as a separate linguistic entity. This situation lasted until the Kyushu-based Satsuma domain conquered the Ryukyu Islands in the 17th century. The Ryukyu Kingdom retained autonomy until 1879, when it was annexed by Japan. The Japanese government adopted a policy policy of forced assimilation, appointing mainland Japanese to political posts and suppressing native culture and language. Students caught speaking Ryukyuan were made to wear a dialect card, a method of public humiliation. Students who regularly wore the card would receive corporal punishment. In 1940, there was a political debate amongst Japanese leaders about whether or not to continue the oppression of the Ryukyuan languages. Although the argument for assimilation prevailed, in the World War II era, speaking Ryukyuan was officially illegal, although in practice the older generation was still monolingual. This policy of linguicide lasted into the post-war occupation of the Ryukyu Islands by the United States, as the American occupation forces generally promoted the reforming of a separate Ryukyuan culture. Many Okinawan officials continued to strive for Japanification as a form of defiance. Nowadays, in favor of multiculturalism, preserving Ryukyuan languages has become the policy of Okinawa prefectural government, as well as the government of Kagoshima Prefecture's Oshima Sub-Prefecture. However, the situation is not very optimistic, since the vast majority of Okinawan children are now monolingual in Japanese. Geographic distribution. The Ryukyuan languages are spoken on the Ryukyu Islands, which comprise the southernmost part of the Japanese archipelago. There are 4 major island groups which make up the Ryukyu Islands: the Amami Islands, the Okinawa Islands, the Miyako Islands, and the Yaeyama Islands. The former is in the Kagoshima Prefecture, while the latter 3 are in the Okinawa Prefecture. Orthography. Older Ryukyuan texts are often found on stone inscriptions. Tomouden no Hinomon, for example. Within the Ryukyu Kingdom, official texts were written in kanji and hiragana, derived from Japan. However, this was a sharp contrast from Japan at the time, where classical Chinese writing was mostly used for official texts, only using hiragana for informal ones. Classical Chinese writing was sometimes used in Ryukyu as well, read in Kundoku or in Chinese. In Ryukyu, katakana was hardly used. Historically, official documents in Ryukyuan were primarily written in a form of classical Chinese writing known as kanban, while poetry and songs were often written in the Shuri dialect of Okinawan. Commoners did not learn kanji. Omoro Soshi, a noted Ryukyuan song collection, was mainly written in hiragana. Other than hiragana, they also used Suzuho numerals, derived from China. In Yonaguni in particular, there was a different writing system, the kaida glyphs. Under Japanese influence, all of those numerals became obsolete. Nowadays, perceived as dialects, Ryukyuan languages are not often written. When they are, Japanese characters are used in an ad hoc manner. There are no standard orthographies for the modern languages. Sounds not distinguished in the Japanese writing system, such as glottal stops, are not properly written. Sometimes local kunyomi are given to kanji, such as igari for iri for, thus is iriamote. Phonology. Ryukyuan languages often share many phonological features with Japanese, including a voicing opposition for obstruents, CV syllable structure, Maraic rhythm, and pitch accent. However, many individual Ryukyuan languages diverge significantly from this pan-Japonic base. For instance, Ogami does not have phonemic voicing in obstruents, allows CCVC syllables, and has unusual syllabic consonants such as kff, may. Consonants. The northern Ryukyuan languages are notable for having glottalic consonants. Phonemically, these are analyzed of consisting of a cluster, plus C, where the consonant consists of its own mora. For instance, in the Amami dialect Yuan, the word mart horse is bimaraic. Sukan restricts glottalization to glides and the vowels ai, Southern Ryukyuan mostly has little to no glottalization, with some exceptions. For instance, the Arabu dialect of the Miyako language only allows glottalization with t and c, ttje at then, cciipi. Southern Ryukyuan stands out in having a number of syllabic consonants. These consonants are contextually nucleic, becoming syllabic when not adjacent to a vowel. Examples: Irabu Miyako, nam, wave, mna, shell, per millimeter, potato, pztu, man, prrma, daytime, ogami Miyako, us, cow, ss, dust, kss, breast. Ogami even shows a three-way length distinction in fricatives, though across a syllable boundary: f, child, f, grass, f, comb equals top. Ikema has a voiceless Moraic nasal phoneme n, which always precedes another nasal onset and assimilates its place of articulation to the following nasal vowels. Umami has high and mid-central vowels. Yonaguni only has three contrasting vowels, I, U, and A. Suprasegmentals. The Ryukyuan languages operate based on the mora. Most Ryukyuan languages require words to be at least bi-Moraic. Thus, for example, in Hateruma, the underlying noun root si, hand, becomes si when it is an independent noun, though it remains as si when attached to a clitic e. G, C equals new. However, the syllable may still sometimes be relevant. For instance, the Ogami topic marker takes a different form after open syllables with short vowels. Staff, pu plus equals, pu equals I. Vegetable, su plus equals, su equals I. Person, pstu plus equals, pst equals. Ryukyuan languages typically have a pitch accent system where some mora in a word bears the pitch accent. They commonly either have two or three distinctive types of pitch accent which may be applied. The category of foot also has relevance to the accentual systems of some Ryukyuan languages, and some Miyako varieties have a cross-linguistically rare system of tonal foot. However, Irabu Miyakoan does not have lexical accent. Grammar. Morphology. The Ryukyuan languages consistently distinguish between the word classes of nouns and verbs, distinguished by the fact that verbs take inflectional morphology. Property concept words are generally bound morphemes. One strategy they use is compounding with a freestanding noun. Ikema, imi, small, plus ffa, child, imiffa, small child, yuan. Kajura, beautiful, plus gin, kimono, kajura, jin, beautiful kimono. Compounding is found in both northern and southern Ryukyuan, but is mostly absent from Hateruma. Another way property stems are used is by verbalization. Yuan imami. Miyako is unique in having stand-alone adjectives. These may be formed by reduplication of the root, e.g., Irabu Miyako imi, small, imi, small. They may also be compounded with a grammaticalized noun munu, thing, e.g., Irabu imi munus, small. Syntax. Ryukyuan languages are generally SOV, dependent marking, modifier head, nominative accusative languages. They are also pro-drop languages. All of these features are shared with the Japanese language. In many Ryukyuan languages, the nominative and genitive are marked identically, a system also found, for example, in Austronesian languages. However, Ryukyuan has the unusual feature that these markers vary based on an animacy hierarchy. Typically there are two markers of the form equals ga and equals nu, which are distinguished based on animacy indefiniteness. In yuan imami, for instance, the nominative is marked with equals ga equals nu and the genitive by equals ga equals nu equals o based on the following hierarchy. In the Miyako variety, varieties. The object in a dependent clause of clause chaining constructions has a special marker, homophonous to a topic marker. This might even be interpreted as another function of the topic marker. Heteromayama stands out in that it is a zero-marking language, where word order rather than case marking is important. The Ryukyuan languages mark both topic and focus grammatically. The typical form of the topic mark is =a, or in southern Ryukyuan =bar. The typical focus marker is =do. In some Ryukyuan languages there are many focus markers with different functions. For instance, Irabu has =do in declarative clauses, =ru and yes/no interrogative clauses, and =gar in WH interrogative clauses. The focus markers trigger a special verbal inflection. This typologically unusual focus construction, known as kakari masubi, was also found in Old Japanese but has been lost in modern Japanese. Examples from Uwanimami. While in many Japonic languages this special inflection is often identical to the verbal inflection in relative clauses, in Uwanimami is different. There is some variation among the Ryukyuan languages as to the form of kakari masubi. For example, in Irabu Miyako, a focus marker blocks a specific verb form, rather than triggering a special inflection. Bibliography.